Time now then for our news review, where we take you through the morning papers. Here with me are journalist and broadcaster Benjamin Butterworth and Mail Online reporter Lettice Bromowski. So welcome back to both of you.
Good morning.
And we're kicking off with the Daily Mail, which really sums up the newspapers this morning because they've got half their front page devoted to Prince Harry's interview that he did with the BBC and the other half towards the extraordinary day that Reform had in the local elections yesterday. And we dealt with Harry first last time. This time, let's take a look at the election results. And the Daily Mail, they're calling it the Reform Revolution. And that is, they really did have an extraordinary day, which exceeded, I think, even their own expectations.
Yeah, I think it exceeded everyone's expectations, and it shouldn't be sort of undermined in any way that this was a hugely successful night for Reform. What they're going to have to deal with now is, one, they're going to be under immense scrutiny. All their 677 councillors, their 2 new mayors, everything they do will be looked at and scrutinised massively. So they're going to now have to sort of translate their phenomenal popular success that they've had into actual physical governing success. And I think that's going to be a lot harder than Nigel Farage thinks. You know, councils at the moment across the UK, there isn't that much money to go to them. A lot of them are experiencing bankruptcy. A lot of them are experiencing struggles with the bin men on strike in Birmingham. Things like that are becoming a real issue for councils. So there's a lot that he's going to have to work with. I also think the other interesting point that we're going to look at is how Labour is now going to handle the loss of votes that it's lost to Reform, because Reform hasn't just been taking votes from the Tories like people expected. They've also been taking votes from Labour. And I think that that's most well seen in the by-election in Runcorn that we saw, which Reform won by 6 votes, phenomenal. And they did take a lot of votes from Reform, but they also lost a lot of their votes to the Green Party. So now if Labour goes the way they're going and starts to move more to the right in terms of watering down net zero policies, for example, they're going to start losing voters across the board. And so that will be to the Greens and that will be to Reform.
They're definitely treading a fine line there, aren't they? And you make 2 points there. One, that Reform, now in positions of power, will be tested and examined on how they do, and the other, the fallout for other parties. So let's deal with the first of those inside the Mail. And Benjamin, there's a story here saying Farage to ban working from home at his local authorities. This is one of the things that some of the councillors and the councils they control will implement.
Yeah, so places like Kent, which is where Nigel Farage has lived, so I imagine he'll take a close interest in what those councillors do. He wants to get rid of working from home. He says it will make it more efficient. He wants to get rid of so-called wasteful spending on things like climate change targets and diversity. And something like Elon Musk's DOGE, Department of Government Efficiency, in councils. Now, all well and good in theory. I wonder how difficult he'll find that in practice. You know, lots of the big-ticket arguments for Reform are things like immigration. Well, councils can't really do anything about that.
They can ban... Go on.
No, I was going to say, he suggested they won't have them in hotels and houses in these council areas. I'm not sure how easy that's going to implement, whether that's going to have a friction between central government, the Home Office and local councils, because they have to go somewhere. And if he doesn't achieve that, that might be a rather conspicuous failure based on the reasons people voted for them. But I'd just say one thing on Labour's problem is that Doncaster was really interesting. They lost most of the Labour councillors to Reform, but the Labour directly elected mayor still won by a decent margin, and she'd been campaigning, Ros Jones, to use local money for winter fuel allowances for the elderly, so going against the Labour Party line. So there's a lesson there that, you know, do people fundamentally want to shift, or are they angry at the government? Because there were still some interesting anomalies among the results.
Well, yes, and she was quite outspoken, wasn't she?
Exactly.
And some others within the Labour Party have also been critical of the government and saying that some of their policies, like the winter fuel allowance, for example, was a factor for a lot of people turning against Labour. So.
No,
on to the other point that you made earlier about the impact this will now have on the main parties, how they respond.
Well, exactly. And I think we're at a sort of turning point for Keir Starmer where I think it's going to get harder for him. It's been only 10 months since he's had his landslide election. And, I mean, Labour didn't do very well last night at all. Obviously, the Conservatives have been seen as the big losers, but Labour also did terribly. I think last I checked, they were on 99 councillors, which is really realisable. And going back to Doncaster, she also spoke out against Keir Starmer, and it was quite public after her win, in quite a public moment, to be saying, you know, you need to take notice of this. And the Labour line up to that point all throughout yesterday was, you know, stick with the plan is working, just keep going along this line, like, trust us, change will come. But actually, YouGov polling that took place last month showed that a vast majority of people are voting Reform because they believed they'll be the party of change, even though Labour in on this ticket of change just 10 months ago.
And that's the thing. People keep pressing the change button and their patience is wearing thin. Brexit, massive change. Boris Johnson turning the North Tory, incredible change. Keir Starmer, you know, the biggest landslide proportionate to the number of MPs that we've had, massive change. And now this Reform, which is a seismic change in British politics.
Yeah.
People are unhappy with the system, and I think there's a lot of unease in the country. And, you know, I think the Labour government needs to understand that unless it looks a bit more radical, it's not going to look like change. And that's where it's coming unstuck.
And people will need to feel it in their pockets as well.
Yeah.
And you weren't far off. It was 98 councillors. I just
Was it?
checked.
Sorry.
I didn't know it off the top of my head, but you were very
Keir Starmer's hoping for 99.
Yeah, I know. One more.
Let's move to the other main story, which is dominating front pages, and that is the extraordinary interview that Prince Harry did with the BBC. It's on the front of the Star, but it's on a number of the papers. My Dad Doesn't Speak to Me is their headline, and that was just one of the many lines that came out of this half-an-hour interview.
Yeah, exactly. A sort of heartbreaking story on one side where Harry is kind of reaching out, but on the other side, I just think he's missed the tone with this one. And I think that if he's really looking for reconciliation with his father, then this isn't the way to go about it. This isn't how the royal family do it. It's not very British of him. And I do think there's influence of sort of Americanization here, influence of California, perhaps, in the way that he chose to do this. And I don't know, obviously, but it would assume that the palace would not have had forewarning that this interview was coming out.
What do you mean, Californian influence? You mean sort of...
It feels very sort of part of American culture, perhaps, to be going out and spreading all of your dirty laundry in public in that sense, and him saying things like, you know, I don't know how long my father has to live, and I don't know whether he'll ever have a relationship with my children, and sort of pulling on the heartstrings. But I feel that that's not the royal family, perhaps, but it's not very British to handle situations in that way. And Harry's obviously done this before. He wrote the book Spare, which is very damning. And in this interview, he says, you know, some people might not forgive me for writing that book, but it was more than a book. It wasn't just a book. It was a book where you essentially trashed your family, the life that you've been brought up in. You sort of turned your back on them. You called your father's wife a wicked stepmother. You even alluded to the fact that she leaked stories about you to the press. So it's not surprising, perhaps, that people might be angry with Harry.
There's clearly a lot of damage in this relationship, and that comes over in this interview, doesn't it? And he looks quite emotional about it at times. But the bulk of the interview is about his disappointment at losing his appeal. He's basically not got the level of security he would like in this country, and he doesn't feel safe and says his wife and children aren't safe.
Yeah.
And that's the main thing that's irked him here.
Yes, so that's the question of whether he gets the level of security that he would do as a working royal, that the King, that the Prince of Wales gets, and the answer, he's tested this in court. Now, he says that he should get that because of the level of risk, which I have a great sympathy with. He is incredibly famous, and if a terrorist were to attack him, I don't think they would care whether he was a working royal or not. So I sympathise with that. But part of the argument is that you can't provide that to a private company, which is who it would have to be. The information would have to be shared with his personal security. Is that legitimate? He's offered to pay for it, so he said it wouldn't cost the Home Office money. But he says in pardon me, he says in this interview that the King could step in and change this, that he could remove the barriers. And so he's clearly agitated. And while on the one hand, he's saying, I don't know how long my father's got to live, I'd like to reconcile, on the next, he's kind of dropping, you know, serious frustrations and angst. So it seems like he's not happy with his father. But he says that he loves Britain. He adds, despite what some there have said about me. So there's always another edge to it with Harry, but, you know, maybe it's understandable. And he says it's a great shame that Archie and Lilibet, his children, Prince and Princess, I should say, won't grow up in the UK, won't see the UK as the rest of his family does.
Do you think this will change minds? I mean, people have strong views
They do.
on Prince Harry and Meghan.
Yeah,
Are they likely to change?
There's always been quite a divisiveness about Harry and Meghan and everything they've done up to this point. I think that with the British public, this is probably not going to go down as well as Harry thinks it will have beforehand. I think that there is a lot of reservations with the British public about how the situation has been handled. And I do disagree that I don't think that he should get this is special funded security when he comes here. He is a millionaire. He's got £100 million deals from Netflix and Spotify. He can fund his own security when he comes.
OK, it's going to get so much discussion at this interview, isn't it? It's extraordinary stuff. You two will be back in the next hour. Lots more to talk about then. Thanks very much, Steve.
Lovely.
We arrive. A secret